Thokoza, mic check, mic check. Please can you let me know that you can all hear me loud and clearly? Please let me know that you can all hear me loud and clearly. Okay, let's give it 4 more minutes on my side and then we can begin. Let's just allow a few more people to bangene. And then we'll begin with our educational class. Please can you confirm that you can all see the screen, the PowerPoint presentation completely? Please can you confirm that you can see it fully? I know last time there were issues with part of it being cropped out, so please can you just let me know that you can all see it completely and clearly. Also, if you guys have questions from last week's session, I'll also be taking those as well. You can also drop those in the comments, even though it has nothing necessarily to do with what we're going to speak on today. I'll gladly be taking any other questions. I'll gladly be taking questions. So I'll gladly be taking questions from last week. Those of you that didn't get the opportunity to ask your question, I'll gladly be taking those as well. So we're going to start in about 2 minutes. Okay, sorry about that. Please can we confirm that last one before we begin? Mic check. Mic check, mic check. We can all hear me loud and clearly. And also this presentation is visible on all your screens. Regarding network issues, I hope it's not on my side. I know that it is thundering and raining a bit on my side. So it also might be that. But fortunately enough, we are recording this, and that as soon as we're done, we will definitely be putting this up onto all our social media platforms. Okay, 1 more minute and then we'll begin and we'll tuck in. Okay, alright, so we're going to start now because according to my watch it is 4 o'clock. Thokozani Sanbonani, my name is Siyabonga African Kize. Thank you all for joining us again for lesson number 3 of our online educational classes. We're greeting one and all from Africa, Asia, Americas, and anywhere else in the world that are joining us this evening. So please, like I said, you definitely do need your notebooks with your family trees and your histories because this is going to be expanding upon that. Every single time, every time we have a lecture or a talk, we can actually expand. We will expand with each lecture and with each conversation. So you do need your notebooks, please. So today I'm going to be taking the time to look at assisted conception and the history of conception within one's family, because it is so important that we understand how one is conceived and how how one's family is blessed with a child is very important. So before we begin, what we're going to do is we're going to just have a quick recap of the last lecture, and then I'm going to give you an introduction and speak to you about the various causes of impotence, infertility, and no conception as vela esikoleni sasemlambomunye, and what we are seeing. I'm going to separate that in terms of 2 problems. 1 of non-conception and 2 actually struggling with carrying to term. And then as you'll see, those are the most dominant forms of assisted conception that that do exist. So before I begin, I want us to all understand that these are all hypothetical situations, and I understand that different laws are different in different countries when it regards to surrogacy, when it comes to surrogacy as well as assisted conception. But because Umsamo has clientele all over the world, we'll be speaking about a variety of means of assisted conception treatment, and then the ball's really into your court. Like I said previously, we don't necessarily tell you what to do and what not to do. We're saying this is what's out there, and should you decide to do that, this is what you need to be aware of and be cognizant of. Okay, so let us begin with struggles that are most prevalent struggles which are most prevalent when it comes to. I have my slides in the wrong way around. Before I begin, I just want to say that last week what we focused on was mainly how to correct the surname. How do you determine the correct surname that you should be having, dependent on 1, whether or not you were conceived in or out of wedlock. What does perfect wedlock look like? What does partial wedlock look like? And how do you correct that? I looked at ourselves as the youth or the generation, Gen Z and millennials, and then I went up and I looked at what happens if our parents made the mistake and how do we correct that? So we're receiving a lot of messages about and confusion around partial wedlock. So I want to state that with partial wedlock, if umuntu wesifazane nomuntu wesilisa bebethandana, lobola was paid and they did umembezo, or they may or may not have done umembezo, and then a child is born after that or before that, right? Okay. But now the man and the woman do not wish to proceed to umgcagco, which is i.e. the wedding. In that instance, where namuntu wesilisa, you can go to the family and request that amalobolo that were paid be used for ingane. And then at that point, if the family accepts that, okay, you are then able to ask the mother's family what's bakhipha ingane nembuzi, and then when on your side of the family ingeniswa ngembuzi. In the event you are conceived before ilobolo and imembeso, am I on mute? Can everyone hear me? I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me, because some people are saying that I'm on mute. So just before I proceed, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me loud and clearly. Please, can we confirm that we can hear me loud and clearly? Okay, perfect. Then I'll proceed. Okay, so as I was saying, sorry about that. So as I was saying, what needs to happen is, if you have a child before ilobolo and umembeso and umgcagco, the day of umgcagco, both yourself and your child need to be exited neslwane out of the family. Okay, so I hope that clears up the partial wedlock. So I'm just going to quickly answer Ubongsile's question. Does this apply to other cultures that you can go and ask? The family. So with the Ngunis, I know that this does apply to the Nguni cultures. The non-Nguni cultures are the ones where you need to actually go and do the research as to whether or not you can use amalobolo. But the spiritual principle underlying the practice is still the same. It's just that the execution between each families may differ. But spiritually, the principles are still the same. Right. Now I want to move on to the origins of infertility and impotence that present esigodlweni sasemlambomunye. So first and foremost, we need to understand that children are a gift from Abadala and God specifically, and that they are given to two individuals, and those individuals are not owners of that child, but rather they are custodians of a blessing that comes from Abadala. Which is why it's so important that you love, nurture, and look after this blessing, because it is not yours. It comes from Abadala, and you are simply a custodian of that. So when it comes to the biggest issues around conception and actually having a child and carrying the child to full term and the child surviving birth, the biggest issues that we're looking at are surname issues, incorrect procedures that happen during the marriage or the wedding, past miscarriages or abortion, infidelity, nesnyama, but also whether or not the couple is related by blood and without their knowledge. So, mhlambe, what can happen is grandparents or great-grandparents were related, but they didn't know about that. Hence, surnames are so important. Okay, so now the first one, I'm going to focus on struggles, people that come to esigodlweni that struggle to conceive a child. The biggest reason why is A, if they have the wrong surname, which physically manifests in that limitation. B, if you have an incorrect marriage procedure, and I'm going to use umgcagco and the Zulu culture as an example, because on the day that the woman is received to the family, right, kuzoba nebhoma ezohlatshwa. There's a cow that's going to be slaughtered by the wife. Okay, and in that moment, uzoqhumbusa umswane noma uzoqhumbusa isiso senkomo. She will actually pierce the cow's stomach or bowels, and that act, nokugida khona emagcekeni of the family that she's actually entering to, it signifies that I am here to to reproduce. I am here to grow this family, and I am here to add more children to this family. So each step, remember what I said to you last week, each step in culture has a spiritual implication underneath it. So sometimes people neglect to do it, and then what happens is, as a result of that, is they struggle to have children, and they need to go back and redo that part. Now, I'm not saying that those that are in Ghana and Nigeria and Zimbabwe, you also need to go back and say, actually, when one is receiving a woman into the family or getting married, what are the steps and what do they signify? That's why I keep saying that we mustn't do culture out of obligation, but for spiritual liberation, and actually look at, wait, of all that we have done, there's not a step that is focused on umama indicating ukuthi ufike la ekhaya to populate and actually grow the family. What do we do then? I hope that makes sense. And then a biggest one is abortions and miscarriages, right? Life happens. People have abortions, and also people lose babies, okay? We will, like we always say, we never say what's right. We're not here to say what's right or wrong, what you should or shouldn't do. We're just going to simply explain what should happen should you lose a baby or have an abortion. Both man and woman badinga ukuyogezwa. I repeat, both man and woman badinga ukugezwa and badinga ukugezwa because the child was not made by only the woman. So therefore, both man and woman need to go for that cleansing. So sometimes what happens is, in our early teens or early 20s or whatever, we lose a baby. Miscarriages happen sometimes without you actually knowing that you've had a miscarriage. That also happens sometimes. Or you decide to abort a child, right? And now you're 30 or 40 or whatever the case may be, and now you want to have a child. But leyo ngane, that you aborted years ago with that ex-partner, isakhalela ubaba wakhe, isakhalela uma wakhe. And that child can actually spiritually and physically block you from having another child because you already have a child. Okay, if that makes sense. So your seed or your egg will not be fertile because there's someone already blocking it because you have not acknowledged that abortion or that miscarriage. And then we move on to, apologies, you don't understand when I talk about problems of conceiving because of the wrong surname. Okay, so isibongo that is incorrect can manifest in the form of struggling with conception. I hope that makes sense. So having an incorrect surname can sometimes be the reason why you and your partner cannot have a child. So maybe you married out of the wrong surname, or perhaps you married into an incorrect surname. I'm looking at it from both man and woman's side. That can be a manifestation of that. So the surname issue can manifest in the form of struggling to conceive a child. Now, infidelity and isnyam, I said this last week as well. If nishadile, senganile, right? And even if nisathandana, okay, going out and deciding to sleep with that person, and then deciding that I want to have a child with you, you don't know what you're picking up along the way, sleeping with all these different people, and now you want to have a child with this person. Okay? So, as I always say, don't itongo will never move or never go to a place where akuhlanzekile futhi ayikho inhlonipho. Right? And second of all, when you're married with your partner, you and your partner are married, and you want to have a child, you need to respect the sanctity of your marriage and the commitment that you have made to abadal by not cheating. Because when you do cheat and you haven't cleansed that cheating, right? Then how bazokuvimba kanjani? By not giving you a child. Ngoba you want abadala to bless you, but when you have not respected and honored the first blessing of your marriage. Blessings must bring more blessings. You want to get the blessing of a child, respect the first blessing of umngako, noma umnyeni wako, and your marriage. And then sometimes couples are related in that couples, or sometimes people don't realize or they don't know because of umlando wasekhaya. That's why it's so important to have your history that you're related. You know, uthi mina wakamkhize kanti ugogo of my wife naye wakamkhize. You know, so sometimes those are the kind of things that zidinga ukugezwa. You know, not as it also depends on the depth of your relation, but that's the depth of relation. I'm going to have to cover it in another thing because to describe the depth of relation does take some time, and I want to focus really on this part here. I'm just going to answer a few questions. How do we cleanse the miscarriage or abortion? This is done esigodlweni where siyahlola, and then we decide the best routes of action. First of all, we need to find out the gender of the child that you aborted, whether we use, because that'll determine the gender of imbuzi seven to cleanse you. And also sometimes when you do abort or have a miscarriage, abadala wants you to name that particular child as well. So that sometimes that does happen. So uklola needs to happen first, and then you can go through the process of ukeza nembuzi or islwane of sorts. So that's one of the services that we do. So it begins with uklola. What do abadala want? Do they want you to name the child? Do they not want you to name the child? Maybe you aborted twins. Maybe you miscarried twins. You know, so all of those things need to be found out first before we cleanse, and then you can actually go cleanse ukrume, bathatha sempopomeni, and then ugeze. You come back, and then you have been cleansed. So that's how it's done. Okay, right. So those are the issues that are most prevalent when it comes to conception. Now I'm going to look at the problems that people present, that those who struggle to carry to full term, right? Full term. So you're able to conceive, but you and your partner are having miscarriages, and you can't conceive to full term. Or maybe you carry to full term and then the child passes away either during childbirth or in hospital. That's also, or in the first year of their life. That's also part of this as well. The people that present the most, these are the different causes. One, past marriages and abortions. That's the first, that's the most prevalent one. Because what happens, because ingane eyasal or ingane engekho iyohlezi ikhalela ubaba wakhe noma ukhalela umma wakhe, and that cannot go unresolved. If you have something in your past, right? I said this on my show, in the morning show, a while back ago, that you and your partner, when you decide to have a child, need to have a serious conversation about your past. Did you miscarry? Did you abort? Or whatever the case may be. You don't even have to tell your partner that you aborted if you're afraid that they're going to judge you. Just say, or I lost the child. You know? Then the second one, which is why it's so important to know your history, is the lack of gratitude for the child that you have right now. If leongane nathandaza naye kumfundisi, or you went through a lot of procedures, nacela nancenga kwahlatshwa izilwane ezu-100 to beg, and you pleaded abadala for this child, and you received that child, and you didn't thank the abadala for that child, then you may struggle to have a child after that. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So you need to go back in London and say, Ma, Bab, how were you conceived? If your grandmother tells you that she struggled to have your mother or your father, you need to say, what did you do? So I'm going to give you an example. I know my mother was a child that they begged for and pleaded for from my dad. So I'm going to tell you the story of my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandfather and my grandmother struggled to have children. They only had one child, my mother. And my grandmother's mother-in-law, right? So in other words, my grandfather's mother, hope that makes sense. She didn't like the fact that her son was going to marry this particular woman who already had 2 children of her own. So she passed away, the mother-in-law, and my grandfather and my grandmother were left with no children of their own. And then in a dream, I think my great-grandmother came to my grandmother and said, I am blessing you with this child. I am sorry I treated you this way. Here you go. And then that month, they fell pregnant with my mother. So that kind of history is important for you to realize and note and jot down in your, actually, Uma ebezalo kanje. And then my name was Usiyabonga a while back. I think it was maybe, sure, I think it was 6-7 years ago. I also had my own physical ailments. Until then, it came about where, Ubaba Watika, have we ever said thank you to Abadala for Usiyabonga? And the reason is, and then we had to do that ceremony with Bongo to Abadala. So are you guys beginning to see umlando, how important it is emdeni? So this is an extra layer of questions that you need to go back and ask ukuthi obani aba emdenini that came through in difficult times, especially children that came through in difficult times where a lot had to go into actually working to get them to come to this world. And then gratitude for the family that raises you or grooms you or looks after you. If you are and I'm speaking particularly to the children that are stepchildren. If you are a stepchild in another family and they raise you, look after you and love you, and when you grow up, ushate, ugane, and you don't go back to say thank you, because that first family is saying, how can you go and start another family without acknowledging and thanking the family that raised you? Okay, so you need to go back and say thank you to the one that raised you and looked after you, and then because the blessing of another child will come from that one, from that family, the step family that groomed you and raised you. So even though ngokwesibongo, right, ngokwesibongo, that you're not connected to that family, but the blessing yengane can come from the step family, which is what stepchildren don't understand, which is why it's important to go back and say thank you. Proceed. Okay, I've already mentioned the small parts of the cultural rating. I gave an example of umtato, and I said that all of those that are from different cultures need to go back, and you actually need to sit down and write down the entire process and say, what is the spiritual implication behind each and every single step? And if it doesn't have a spiritual implication, ask yourself, why are you wasting time and money doing it? Let's move on. Rejection of the child and nomsindo ekhaya. If wena muntu wesilisa uyazi ukuthi le ngane eyakho, afike umuntu wesifazane and she says to you, listen, this is your child, I will gladly give you a paternity test, but this is your child. Wena muntu wesilisa in your teens and 20s, you know full well that there was a child that you rejected when you were 16, 17, or whatever the case may be. Okay? Leyo ngane needs to be acknowledged first. You can't go and want to have a child with the woman you love when Abadala have already blessed you, which goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, that if you want more blessings, appreciate and respect the first blessing that you already have. Same goes for women. You can't just simply, when you decide to have a child, and then you're like, you know what, I'm just going to dump the child here or wherever the case may be at that orphan or whatever you decide to do. I'm not saying that's wrong or it's right. I'm simply saying this is what you need to think about. Now you're in your 30s and whatever, and you want to get married and you want to have a child with this person. But Abadala cannot bless you with a child when they've already blessed you with a child. Unayo ingane. So what needs to happen? One, the rejection and umsindo kumele ukuthi ugezwe. Kugezwe umuzi, uxolise. Right? You need to cleanse and apologize in that order, and then amend the relationship with the child. And then what will happen is then you can look at having more children. Grace, I see your question here. I'm gonna handle it now. Okay. Right. Okay. So now, before you proceed and say, okay, fine, look, Sabonga, we're not having children, and nothing's working out. We've got the money, we have the luxury. We're gonna go and we're gonna go for the assisted conception route. Nothing wrong with that. We're simply going to say what you should do and what you should be aware of should you choose this route. First and foremost, if you don't correct the past and correct itongo, because itongo and amatongo are the ones that are going to bless you with a child. Should you not go back and correct that, then any and everything that you do to try and get a child will not work. Reason being that we need to understand that assisted conception is a form of impande. And impande needs to be presented to itongo. Itongo livume ukuthi lempande can now be converted to umuti. And then umuti is where it can work and be successful. Right? So now if you are going to present lempande to itongo that A is not on your side and B engahlanzekile, then it's not going to work. You're going to spend millions and millions of rands and dollars and euros doing this thing because itongo has not blessed lempande of assisted conception. So you need to first go correct the past. Have a conversation with your partner and say, actually, let's look at our past. B, you are then going to go to your doctor. I want you to find out the exact reason physically why you cannot have children. Okay? And then when you know why you can't have children, then you can go to amatongo. This is what we would like. This is what we are facing at the moment. We would like to have a child. And when you are doing that, ungaphahli without isilwane. Whether it be inkuku or imbuzi, or whatever the case may be, get your eldest male in the family, we would like to take this route of action. Please, can we have your blessing? Wait for impendulo. Ulinde for impendulo. Because what they might say is, cha, ungayi lapho for assisted conception, iyala. And if they say, cha, qhubeka, izosebenza, then qhubekani izosebenza. Right? Wait for the blessing from amatongo and ask for it before proceeding with assisted conception so that it can work. Because remember, anything assisted conception, yibande that you're presenting. You want to present it to itongo that is on your side and itongo ehlanzekile so that itongo can actually convert lempande to umuti so you can have a child. So now the first example, look, I'm not going to tuck in too much in terms of the science behind it because I don't want to confuse anybody. We'll focus more on the spirituality and ancestral implications behind anything, but more than anything else. Okay. So, intrauterine insemination. So what I'm going to do is how I'm going to do it is I'm going to explain the procedure and then I'm going to give the example of the actual procedure using the family tree. Those of you that were with us last week, the family tree will be very familiar to it. I'm going to use that example again just so that you guys can actually visualize what I'm talking about. So intrauterine insemination is mainly used for men who may have predisposed diseases, conditions, viruses, which can be passed on to the child or the mother, and you want to really you want to have the woman have clean sperm, let me say that, inserted into her uterus, right? Just a disclaimer, this does not include HIV. That has its own separate procedure, which you need to look up. So what happens is man's sperm is cleaned and washed, and then it's inserted, as you can see here in the diagram, into the woman's uterus, right? So you can either use your husband's sperm or you can use a donor's sperm, right? Depending on whether or not your husband can or cannot fall pregnant. Can or cannot conceive. Sometimes men are infertile, maybe they have low sperm count, or the shape of the sperm does not allow them to reproduce. Obviously, I'm not a reproduction specialist. Please bear that in mind. But this essentially, in the event that you're not going to use an actual donor, it's pretty much the same as normal conception. So in the event uDlamini noMazuma are married, the child will have Dlamini's surname. Even if you guys use a donor sperm, so say Dlamini can't conceive because of the shape of his sperm or for whatever other reason, but uMazuma's perfectly fine, and they decide to go the IUI route. Okay. In the event you use a donor sperm, remember what I said last week. Even in the event that you use a donor sperm, in other words, pretty much the same as what ngaphandle. The child will still be a Dlamini because the woman uMazuma no Dlamini bacacile bashadile ngokuphelela. So there's no need for uMazuma to be forced to sleep with uDlamini's brother or cousin or whatever the case may be. You can happily use a donor sperm, and the donor sperm will obviously used to create the child, and the child will still have Dlamini's surname, and the child will be perfectly fine. Okay? In the event, obviously, and the same thing goes that in the event no wedlock, no lobola, no damages, the child will be Inganyaga Zuma. This is obviously if the woman uMazuma opts to go for, she opts to go for donor sperm from a sperm bank or whatever the case may be. Child is Dlamini through and through. Okay. Right. Now another one is IVF, in vitro fertilization. This is where they harvest the eggs from the mother's womb, right? They take the man's sperm and they actually join it together and they fertilize the eggs outside in a bit of a petri dish type of thing. And then they take the fertilized egg and they insert it into the woman, right? So now I'm not really going to tuck into why this procedure, why that procedure. That's more the science and we're not really focusing on that. But there is a chance in this instance to use a donor embryo. Okay, now the surname thing gets a little tricky because now we're using a donor embryo and not necessarily a donor sperm. Let's go back to our family tree. Dlamini and uMazuma want to have a child. Here in red. Okay? uDlamini can conceive perfectly fine, but uMazuma may have issues with the embryos. Right? And they decide to get an egg from, and they decide to get an egg from an outside party. Okay? If they get an egg from an outside party, I am assuming that they won't know the person from which the egg comes from. So therefore, they can't necessarily go to that family and say, and everything like that, as if uDlamini had slept with that other woman. I hope that makes sense. Because they don't know the other person, I think that the best course of action that should take place would be abakaDlamini ukuthi babike Umsamo bathi cha nansi isimo. This is what we are intending to do. This is where iqanda is going to come from. Right? And if iTongo and Namatongo are in agreement with that procedure, what you might find is that they might get lucky in that the embryo might end up coming from someone wakazuma anyway without their knowledge. But if, that's what I said, Amatongo, when they are with you in something, they might end up getting you a donor egg from the Zuma family anyway, right? So that is why it's so important that to not engage in assisted conception without the blessing of iTongo. But in that event, once this is the best course of action, then you can go about getting the child, boy or girl, to be uDlamini ngokuphelela. Okay. So now another one is, I just want to take some questions now, just before. Okay, so Grace says she had her first child and I was on 27 weeks pregnancy and I had to do an emergency operation and the child survived only a couple of days. The night before my child passed, I was having a vision of death. On Sunday morning, I was called to the hospital and they told me they had tried hard for the life of the child. I was called to ICU ward to talk to the child. Amazing part of my child hold on to my finger and then turned to my side. After a while, I was called again that she couldn't and I had to do a funeral and be cleansed at home. I'm so sorry to hear about your story, Grace, but I am happy to hear that you have cleansed the child. That is the most important thing, that you have cleansed the child. So you should be fine. Now, obviously, it depends on now you have a list of other reasons as to what can hold you back from having a child, and also obviously it depends on who you're having the child with. Okay? Is there any impact if no cleansing was done when my grandmother was chased back to her parents' home when she was pregnant with my father? So there won't be an impact for you, Nondando, because you come from the family. You are your grandmother's child, basically. Your grandmother's grandchild, right? Because your grandmother was pregnant with your father and she was chased away. So technically you are the victim family, and there isn't implications for you as... So when it comes to rejection, Umsindo, it's mainly for those that actually do the rejecting and cause umsindo, not necessarily the victims. I hope that makes sense. Miscarriages can be caused by your ancestors. Let me rephrase that. A child is a blessing brought to you by our dad. Okay? In anything in life, ithongo kumele ukuthi lihambe phambili and protect you from anything that can possibly stop this blessing from coming along, if that makes sense. So now, when you don't have that protection of abadala, you are at risk of having a miscarriage or losing your child. I hope that makes sense. Because pregnancy is so difficult and there are so many risks. It is such a life-threatening experience that you do need that protection of abadala. So sometimes miscarriages are a result of that lack of protection or a variety of other things. Was your partner cheating on you or not? Does your partner have ingane with other women outside that he rejected, that he aborted, or so on and so forth? You know? Has your husband killed someone? You see, all of those things can result in isnyama when a mundusfazana, you allow this man, you want to have a child with this man, but this man has isnyama and baggage as well. Hope that makes sense. What happens and what rituals are done for the child born after a miscarriage or abortion? So if you're born after, it depends whether or not you've cleansed. So if you've done the cleansing process after that child has been miscarried, or aborted, then there's nothing necessarily to do. How does one do cleansing post miscarriage? I think I spoke about that in the beginning. That have to come for ukhola. Once ukhola, we find out whether or not abadala want you to name the child or not. We find out the gender of the child, whether or not you had twins or triplets. That all plays a role, and then we take you through to ukgoma. Then you ageza hlatin, then you ageza manzin, impopomeni, and that's how we do it, right? Then you have three children. All my children, I became aware of the pregnancies when I was 5 months pregnant. Is there any significance? Yeah, that abadala want you to make sure you have the child and they don't want there to be any possibility. I'm spitballing here. I can't say off the bat what the significance might be that you find out at exactly 5 months. Because 5 months I know is post. Maybe they're trying to make sure that they only want you to look abadala, like I say, let you know what you need to know when you're ready to know it. And if they only want you to know about it at 5 months, then they feel that perhaps ignorance is bliss, and that if you go the first 5 months without actually knowing you're pregnant, that then you will see you'll see through the rest of your gestation period. Okay? If ubaba ngaseko but he had kids out of perfect wedlock which are older than those in the wedlock, and those kids are all boys. Okay, so assuming that ubaba did not do imfanelo to bring those children into the family, i.e. inhlawulo, ilobolo, and imbeleko for those children, you'll need to find the eldest male that was born in perfect wedlock. I hope that makes sense. So you need to know whether or not how ubaba did imfanelo correctly. Okay? I just want to carry on with the presentation, then I'll take more questions as we go along. We've still got loads of time for questions. Okay. So now we're looking at intracytoplasmic injection, ICSI, right? So this uses the single sperm, like exactly one sperm, and it injects it into an ovum or embryo. It's a type of IVF, and this takes place in the lab, right? Again, let's go back to our family tree of uMadlamini, Ubaba Dlamini, Noma Zuma getting married. uMadlamini, Nobab Zuma, should they decide to go this route, we need to say, okay, fine, are we using a donor sperm or are we using a donor egg? Are we using our own sperm or our own egg? If they're using their own sperm and our own egg, equivalent to normal conception, then that's fine. Assuming that they have perfect wedlock, right? In the event that they use a donor sperm, like I said in the beginning, the child will still be Dlamini. Things get a bit tricky and confusing when you decide to use a donor egg. So if you're going to use a donor egg and you're not going to be able to find out who the actual mother or the family is, then you're going to have to go through the route of Ukpasha and maybe even come for a consultation. So you can actually make sure that this child here with the donor egg is a Dlamini. Is a Dlamini. Okay. Then surrogacy. I know a lot of all the countries have different laws when it comes to surrogacy. I think South Africa, you can't really be a surrogate unless the child is made from DNA from both parents. I think, but surrogacy is perfectly fine. I think women that have a volatile womb or perhaps no womb at all, but they have frozen their eggs or whatever the case may be, they can opt, I guess, to go through the surrogacy route. There is nothing wrong with surrogacy from a point of view, Sintu and ancestral point of view. If you're not using a donor egg, right? Now I'm speaking for South Africans, considering that you can't actually do this unless you're using wife's egg and dad's sperm. Those are in other countries have different laws, but I'm speaking now for South Africans. If you are going to go this route, then clearly you're using mom's egg, dad's sperm. So therefore, there shouldn't be a problem. It's equivalent to actually normal conception. However, the trick is the surrogate. You need to get khona ekhaya niphahle, because you are using ingane yabo to bring your child or blessing into the world. You need to go there, ukhuluma nomndeni wakhe of the surrogate, right? Nibike khona ukuthi cha, sicela ukuthi ingane isiza ngalokho, so that ithonga lakhe, because naye unethonga lakhe, even though she's your surrogate, unethonga lakhe, right, accepts this foreign, in inverted commas, item in her belly, or child in her belly. Okay, ngoba you're going to accept this surrogate, right? Ningayi khona ekhaya niphahle nicele nenze yonke into nemfanelo and everything else, and then the child doesn't make it to term, or the child doesn't make it to term because ithongo yalowa muntu does not necessarily want this child inside of her. Yikho nje you need permission from ithonga lakhe namathongo akhe, in the abadala bakhe at her family. Then wena muntu wesilisa, right, speaking from Udlamini here, Udlamini, he must then come back ekhaya aphahla ashisa impepho emsamo athi cha Makhize, nangu uMamkhize uzosiza ngokuletha ingane yenu la ekhaya nasemhlabeni. Sicela ukuthi nisinikeze isibusiso senu. Please bless us. Nomamkhize ukuthi she's bringing this child into this world for us, for yena noMadlamini. Kodwa iqanda lakhe liphuma kumaZuma ingane yenu, umakoti wenu. All right. So that's how you would handle surrogacy. So you need to go to A, your own ancestor's husband, right? And then B, you need to go to the surrogate's family. niphahla and ask for that blessing as well. Okay. So then for the last part, right, and then the rest of the remainder of the session, I'm just going to answer questions, is a bit of a tricky one. And I'd love to hear your guys' take in the comments, where a child was born with 3 biological parents. 2 mothers, 1 sperm. Now, if it were 2 sperm and 1 mother, then it would be very straightforward. Let me explain. Hypothetically speaking, were it 2 sperm, let me go back up. Were uDlamini noMazuma married? Wacaca ngokuphelela. And they had 2 sperm. Let's say this was a man that was indoda kaNdlovu. Let's say uDlamini noNdlovu, their sperms were combined, and then you had, and then with uMazuma's egg, and you had a child. Then that child would easily be uDlamini, no problem. That's fine. Now, the trick with this one, in that babies were born with 3 biological parents, was that, let me explain. Let me actually do the diagram, because I think that'll be better. So what they did, okay, how it was possible. The mother had a problem with her mitochondrial DNA. So there's DNA from the mitochondria, and then there's DNA in the nucleus. Okay? So what they did was they removed the faulty DNA from the mother, and then from the donor egg, they removed the donor's genes, if that makes sense. So now they had the mother's normal nucleus DNA, and then they had the donor's egg mitochondrial DNA, and then they had the father's sperm fertilizing the egg. So this child is made up of DNA from 2 mothers, but the father is 1. So that is how uMazuma, right? Sorry, uMazuma, noBaba Dlamini, noMamkhize are all the parents of this child over here. So now you're going to say, okay, so now what do we do with this situation? So it's very hypothetical, guys. This is very hypothetical. I don't even think it's legal yet in South Africa or Africa as a whole. So it's very hypothetical, and I would be a bad teacher if I didn't give you a difficult example to kind of test your knowledge and wisdom. Okay. Mazuma noBaba Dlamini are married ngokuphelela bacaca. But now this child here has 2 mothers and 1 father. Okay? Were uMazuma noMamkhize in a isithembu noBaba Dlamini? Very easy, very straightforward. Leyo ngane izobe uDlamini. Were they both kwisithembu uMamkhize noMazuma? But assuming that they are not, right, I would say that the child can be uDlamini. Let me explain why. Because uMazuma uyingane yakaDlamini. Okay? uMazuma uyingane yakaDlamini. However, uDlamini needs to go here kaMkhize. And I think he should akhokhe noma abonge in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to explain why it's so important to ukuthi abonge. You're going to say to me, yes, but siyabonga, it's just a donor egg. Why is it important? Let me explain why. And now it's the science that's coming in. Mitochondrial DNA of uMazuma here is gone. Right? Mitochondrial DNA of uMamkhize is in the child. Mitochondrial DNA is passed on from generation to generation to generation with very little variance. So mitochondrial DNA, the nucleus DNA will change and can change, but the mitochondrial DNA, so this child here will forever have mitochondrial DNA nemsipha asisho njalo yakwaMkhize until. So by virtue of the fact that they've introduced mitochondrial DNA of uMkhize, they've introduced imsipha kaMkhize for all the generations to come. Which is why mina, were I in the situation, I would say Dlamini, le ngane ayibiza isibongo sika Dlamini, kodwa uDlamini kumele ukuthi ayobonge la and acknowledge abakamkhize ngoba leyo ngane inemsipha yakamkhize, and on top of that amathongo can still come from Mkhize. Alright, so it's a very, very difficult one to navigate, but once you understand, by understanding the science of mitochondrial DNA, you understand the principles of Isinto, you can see which is which. Okay, I'm going to actually tack into questions now. I'm just going to be spending the next 30 minutes or so just answering questions. Thokoza Zama, so Uzama's asking me what's ngichaze kahle ngesiZulu ngelinye ilanga. Okay, tell you what, I think that's what we'll do. I think what we will do is we'll try organize a Zulu and an English class, like 2 classes, similar to what University of Pretoria does, just so that both sides can understand exactly what's going on. Okay, if I was raped and fell pregnant and decided to keep the child and now the child is alive, how do I tell the child his paternal origin? What do I do to introduce the child to the ancestors? What happens to the genealogy of that child, particularly if it's a boy who has to carry the surname? Okay, thank you very much, Mavis, for that question. And also thank you very much for opening up the fact that you were raped and you kept the child. If you were raped and you fell pregnant, that child izoba ingane yakho, and it's going to have your maiden surname. It will have your maiden surname, and it will keep your maiden surname, and your son, I'm assuming if you're saying it's a boy, will continue your maiden surname, right? And should you decide to marry a gentleman, I've already spoken about this in the beginning of this podcast. Sorry, the beginning of this this lesson. That boy, you can either A, leave him behind no gogo, ahlale ekhaya, or B, should he go and live with you and this gentleman, that gentleman kumele ukuthi aye umsamo wakhe aphahle athi cha, this child, I am taking him into this home, I am bringing him in, I'm going to love him, I'm going to look after him and nurture him and so that he grows up in this family. But he must keep your maiden surname. Okay? And then, when your son is grown, before he gets married, must come back to your new father's surname and actually thank them for looking after them and raising him. He must say thank you, because that can also stop him from actually having a family of his own. I hope that answers your question. If not, please just let me know in the comments. And how you tell the child his paternal origin really is dependent on you. I feel like that touches a little bit of psychology, and that's not really my field of expertise. I think maybe not a bad idea to consult a child psychologist or a therapist when it comes to that, in terms of how you're going to tell him about his paternal origin. Not a bad idea to do that. Okay, that was a comment. Is the cleansing considered an emergency, as I would like to come and do the cleansing in Lambamunya? I feel like this is affecting me as a person and the kids that I have. Please can you, Ma Bentley, please can you actually phone us on our landlines and describe your whole story and scenario and actually what is going on, and then they will determine whether or not it is or is not an emergency, and they will see what they can do for you. So you need to I need a full story of actually what is going on. Okay, if the doctors say I don't have an egg to get pregnant, which route can I take spiritually and medically? And is it possible to get pregnant after you have been told by the doctors that you don't have eggs? So the thing with African spiritual science is that it falls outside the realms of Western science, and that sometimes Western science sometimes an issue isn't a physical issue in terms one that spiritual science can heal, but it is outside its realm, and that spiritual science can actually overcome that and heal that, depending on what your situation is. Sometimes you need, it depends on what you are dealing with and what you are going through. And if you say that you don't have eggs at all, I need to know, actually, Bongsile, can you please tell me, when you say you don't have eggs, is it because you have no eggs at all, or is it because you are not developing mature follicles? There's a big difference between the two. If you're not, because sometimes you can have no eggs at all, or are you not developing mature follicles? I just need to know the difference so that I can answer that, Bongsila. I hope you're listening. Please can you just let me know, what do you mean by not having eggs? Okay, that was another comment. Guys, thank you so much to those that are answering people's questions as well that I'm missing. If I miss your questions, because I've seen someone else has answered it and it is correct. So that's just not, I'm not ignoring your question. For miscarriage or abortion cleansing, is it a must to use a goat, chicken? Is a chicken acceptable? So I'm not sure if a chicken is acceptable. We do use a goat as I'm not sure if a chicken is acceptable. It might be too small of an animal. Because remember, ngesikhathi ungenisa ingane emndenini usebenzisa imbuzi for imbeleko, right? Ngesikhathi ingane iphuma emndenini iqhutshwa ngani? Imbuzi. You use a goat. So the same way, when you want to cleanse a child that is not there, you use a goat. That's why we use a goat. So now, if you're going to use a chicken for a human, or an instance where we typically use a goat, then that might not necessarily work. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So someone here is commenting saying that what will happen. So Ututu saying two sangomas pregnant, said you are pregnant, but the tests are negative. That has happened to someone. So about 4 years ago, she came as and she also had a similar problem. She had a similar problem as well. For that, I can't tell you exactly what to do here. You're gonna have to come for a consultation, because it's very dependent on what it is. And I think, depending on how long it is, you can consider it an emergency, because if you've had the child for too long in your belly, then you're looking at damaging the placenta. The placenta can rupture. So just please call us and let us know. It might be considered an emergency. Decide. They will. Please call them, and please call us, and they'll let you know. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mshinza, ngokumchazela about impepho nokushiselwa ubani ukuthi ubani ushiswa impepho. Thank you very much. Ngiyabonga, Mshiza. Okay, so for those of you who are non-Zulu speaking, there was a question about ubani ongashisa impepho, ubani ongakwazi ukushisa impepho. So when it comes to impepho is shiswa the oldest male in the family, right? And when all the males are gone, and kusela umama kuphela, then ngoba ephoqelwe isimo, she can akwazi ukushisa impepho. But even ngesikhathi ephahla, kumele ukuthi abachazele abadala ukuthi cha, ushisa impepho ngenxa yesimo sokuthi abekho abantu besilisa ekhaya. You know, if that makes sense. But if you are married, so say uMazuma can never go back home kwaZuma ashisa impepho kaZuma ngoba uyingane kaDlamini manje. She can't burn incense kwaZuma. But if there's no men in the family left kwaDlamini, she can gladly burn incense kwaDlamini. Hope that makes sense. Okay, thanks so much, Bongsile, for the comment there. Thanks, Tembega. Thanks, SP Zuma. I'm just answering. I'm just scrolling up, getting through the questions. I don't see any more questions. Okay, so Precious No, that's not precious. So someone here saying I'm losing sight and no one knows the condition. Um, 2 months ago, Dr. Mkiza was on Ukozi FM with a lady who had a son who was losing sight, and the sight came back of Mbogogeza, and the main reason was because Uma didn't. Well, I'm speaking about the child now. I'm speaking about that particular case. The child was losing sight because Uma had abadala nobunyanga that she was meant to accept, but she didn't, and that came out enganeni. So that is an example of how it can come out. So if you're losing sight, for that you're going to have to come for a consultation. If you can't, qala ngokuphahla nomlando wasekhaya and ask abadala ukuthi ubani othatha amehlo. Why are you losing your sight? Ayaphi amehlo akho? That's the reason you need to actually, I'd say that's an emergency. I think that's an emergency. So if you call us, then we could probably make a plan for you. It sounds like an emergency because you're losing sight. Okay, I've done sterilization back in 2009. I've remarried. You have remarried your hubby, and now you want a child with your new husband. Will artificial insemination work? Okay, so I can't guarantee that it will work from a medical perspective because it's not my field of expertise. Also, when you mean sterilization, what do you mean sterilization? Like, did you give a mastectomy? Did you remove your uterus completely? Did you remove your fallopian tubes? Have you tied your tubes? Those are the kind of questions that I need to know exactly. Okay, I'm going to go to the bottom now to answer more questions. Okay, so Snekuku, there's an interview. So I'm being asked to hold a lecture on how God and African spirituality combined. There is an interview I did on a morning show essay where I talk about how the two intertwine and how they work together. I'll ask the team to post that link after this, and I will also do it again should you require that. Okay, here's another question from Upila. Ngicela ukubuza ubaba walobola ingxenya wambesa base bayoshada i-white wedding. Ngicela ukuza izingane zakwabani. Okay, Pila, because your father did a white wedding and they didn't do umcaco, which is an African wedding. Ingane, there are still ingane zkamama, right? What needs to happen if ubaba wakho wants ukuthi ingane to be ilungu lomndeni, he needs to say, if it depends, I don't know, if he wants the child and the mom, then he needs to say, okay, fine, ngicela ukuthi sicace. And the day of umcaco, kukhishwa umama nengane as well. Umuntu nesibane sakhe. In the event that he does not necessarily want to be romantically involved, no mama, okay, then what needs to happen is, as I said in the beginning, he must go to ubaba. Ubaba wakho must go to their family and say, ngicela ukuthi lamalobolo engiwakhokhile, please can we use them for ingane? And then ingane zikhishwe ngembuzi, zingeniswa ngembuzi as well. Simple, straightforward. What processes need to take place when it comes to same-sex couple hoping to do IVF? Okay, so I wanted to end with same-sex couple. I'm going to take more questions though because we've got about 12 more minutes. I'm going to have a separate lecture when I speak about same-sex couples because I need everyone to understand why there is nothing wrong with homosexuality, why there is nothing wrong with where the gender spectrum, where the sexual orientation spectrum comes from. And I need you to understand the spirituality behind, like, I need everyone to understand where homosexuality or being a member of the LGBTQ community comes from when it comes to an African spiritual perspective. Only once you understand that can we then look at how would someone who is a same-sex couple get married and what does that mean for their children as well. So I'm going to first give that foundation. I'm going to have a separate lecture solely on members of the LGBTQ plus community here online. So just hold that question, please. Okay. Is a situation where you do not know anyone from your father's side of the family, what impact does that have uma usuphahla, is there anything that one has to do in order for things to be in order? Please advise. Thanks so much for the question, Bugani. Please can you let me know whether or not, please let me know what happened between your mother and father. What were the terms of your conception? Baglobola, Baikokilinklaulo. Just please give me a little bit more details. Were you born in perfect wedlock, imperfect wedlock? Because if you're born out, if you don't know anyone from your side, your father's side of the family, right, and no one did anything for you from your father's side of the family, then usibongo sakho is going to be your mother's maiden surname. And ngesikhathi uphahla, you're just going to call upon abagama wakho, right? Because those are the ones that you know. Okay. And then obviously you'll just look at the candles, seeing how they burn, and you'll see where the problem lies. So I would say it's not a train smash not knowing anyone from your side, your father's side of the family. As long as you have the right surname and your mother has the right surname, then you'll be fine. Right surname for you being your mother's surname. Okay, but for now, use your biza abagama wako. Okay. Let me go up. Okay, I've answered that question. There's another question here. Husband and I got married. We tried to conceive, and they told me and my husband I don't have eggs at all. But you can send me your details. This is stressing me in my marriage. Okay. Can you please drop us an email at mlambomunye@umsamo.org.za? Obviously, I understand maybe there's a few details you don't feel comfortable sharing here on this public platform. You can actually send us an email detailing your situation, and we'll take it from there. Okay, right. Okay, so I want to Okay, so I'm answering this question here. So I'm assuming it's a lady. What I'm accused is she's saying she is using isibongo where ugogo wakho shadele khona. So I'm just trying to get through all these questions. Wait, where's that question? I've lost the question now. Okay. Would I have to do a ritual for my son since he is using my surname and he was rejected by his father? Do we have to do a ritual for my son since he was rejected by his father? You need to, if your son was rejected by his father, then perhaps what I need to do, okay, tell you what, for those that want to know how to handle rejection from Msindo on what we need to do, we're going to record, or I'll record a short snippet, a short video in which I actually detail what exactly to do and how to exactly go about it. Because I'm getting quite a few questions of that. So I'm going to actually, I don't want to just tell you, I don't want to get wrapped up in analysis paralysis. I actually want to tell you exactly what to do so you can actually get out of what you're in. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to give you exactly blow by blow what to do. Okay. So also, guys, when you say sterilization, you need to let me know what kind of sterilization. That's also quite important because obviously there are limitations. If you've got no fallopian tubes, no ovaries, and no uterus, then that's obviously different. Gentlemen, if you had prostate cancer and you don't have testicles anymore, that obviously is different. Okay. Guys, please copy paste your questions if I've missed them. Please just copy paste the questions if I've missed them. I'm trying to get through as many as I can so that on Monday when we have our next class carrying on from the previous lecture, we can keep going. Okay. Thank you so much to the guys and the people that are answering people's questions. Thank you very much. Again, if I'm not answering or commenting on the question, then I can see someone has already actually answered it and is correct. So yeah, okay. So two stillbirths. Just translating here. I'm just translating here. So this person saying they had two stillbirths, um, at the same time of the pregnancy, at the exact same time of the pregnancy. Um, so okay. So when you're having stillbirths, right, as an issue when it comes to carrying to term. So you need to look at umlando wako and your parents and your partner, right? If you're still with that partner, you both need to sit down and have a very tough conversation when it comes to your history. Okay. Second of all, ngesikhathi niphahla, I want you and your partner to both. I'm assuming you both are married or penela, or if you're not, then that's also. Or you need kumele ukuthi niphahle nibuze msamo ukuthi kahle kahle kuvinjwaphi, assuming that there's nothing happened. So assuming nothing happened in the past. So the fact that I understand why you would have a second stillbirth after the first, because if you haven't cleansed the first stillbirth, then possibly you're looking at having a second. Your chances are elevated at having a second stillbirth and the third one, and so on and so forth. So you need to kuzomele ukuthi ugeze lezo ingane ezimbili that you lost, both you and your partner, and then you also need to look at the children that you may have had before meeting each other. Okay, so there was also a question about losing a child because kumele ukuthi uthwase. That is possible, but the most of the time when you lose a child because of ikwama that were not accepted, it's because your parents didn't accept ikwama, and that falls onto you. So you need to. I can't see. I can't remember the person. I can't see. I can't find the question now. The person who that person who said you suspect or you were told that you lost your child because you didn't um, you didn't accept your calling. Ask your mother and father, because chances are they had to accept their calling, and now that's falling on you. Okay, I'm gonna take two more questions, and then that's a wrap for today. The repercussions of choosing a family for your child through looking at whatever, but knowing very well the guy is not the father. What might go wrong as ingane ikula? So, hold on, let me just read that again. Okay, so this is what I spoke about last week. If you are married in complete wedlock, right? And you decide to have a child with another man outside, and now you're saying, Wuti, you're going to tell your actual husband that no, this is your child. Leongani is uhlupeka, and is going to have many problems, because the main reason why leongane ilong bizwa ngelongwe ngesizulu, because that child, right, even though the father is another man, izobizwa isibongo sika la ugane khona, la ushade khona. Okay, and lelo hlazo needs to be cleansed. Without lelo hlazo ligezwe and cleansing, leyo ngane is going to have many troubles in life. The best case I can give you is our most recent case of that scenario is the child is currently sitting in prison, serving a very long sentence, while the people he was committing the crime with are already out and free. So I'm not saying that your child's going to go to prison. I'm going to say that as an example of what happens. And then another scenario where what happened is maybe you fall pregnant, and then you meet the guy that you want to actually have a child with, or the guy that you love, right? So let's say Umadlamini falls pregnant with Umkize's child, right? And then they don't work out. Then she starts dating Ubab Dlamini, then they sleep together, knowing Uzuma knows that the child was Umkhize, okay, but she's going to say what no ingane, right? Leongane, same thing. Leongane is going to be in trouble because that child is going to get the Dlamini surname, which is incorrect. And then that child with the incorrect surname is going to go and marry someone else. So sometimes I do feel bad. Sometimes women can be victims of the circumstance because they can marry a man who. So if you, man or woman, have a child or decide to marry this child, right, that has an incorrect surname because uma wakhe ugcina imfihlo, your children that you have with this man or woman will be implicated because of their grandmother's decision. I'm gonna end it there for today. If you have any other questions, I know some people joined later on, and quite a few of the questions I actually answered already in the very, very beginning of this talk. So please, can you just watch the recording? Thank you so much for joining in. Please stay safe during this lockdown, and have a lovely and blessed Saturday afternoon. Thank you, and good night.